Hey, paranormal podcast fans, this is Chad, and we've got a really great treat for you today. We're going to have a recorded interview with some gentlemen that are part of a great team that have a product that I think everybody should look into. If you like our podcast, you like the paranormal, you like cryptids, and, well, these gentlemen have something pretty awesome to offer. I am here with some of the team behind Creatureplica. Anybody that's not familiar with Creatureplica, I urge you to take a look. They are some great figures that are based off very popular cryptids. They're super detailed. They look wonderful. They have articulation, and I can't go on about them anymore about how great they are. I actually got a set, and I have this team with me tonight, and I'd like for them to come on and tell you a little bit about themselves and what they do.
Go ahead, Gene.
Okay. Well, I've been doing this for about 20 years as a vendor. I've been a toy sculptor and designer, and I work for, I've done everything from dolls to preschool to action figures, collectible statues. And I've always had an interest in cryptozoology, particularly relict hominids and extant apes, i.e. Bigfoot and the Yeti. So Jeff had come along a few years ago and approached me with the idea, and along the way we picked up Craig and Nick. And from there we've just been pushing to be one of the first companies to come out with a cryptid line that actually has some staying power in the marketplace based on a higher quality of detail and more impressive size to the figures and more of a basis in witness reports and folklore as opposed to just sort of the typical kind of hokey toy company design material.
All right. They look wonderful. And Gene St. Jean is who you just heard. He is the sculptor and one of the wonderful minds behind these figures. All right, who's next?
This is Jeff Byers, and I am one quarter of Creatureplica, co-founder, and just as Gene said, our interest, our love of the subject matter, cryptids, that kind of brought us together. And, from there we took off. We got our shipping guy, Craig, here, and actually the brains behind the logistics, holy cow, and Craig Deere.
Hi, Chad. Nice to meet you this evening. And
Craig.
As Jeff said, my name's Craig Deere. And I have no artistic abilities whatsoever, so it really was a good marriage with Jeff and Gene and Nick. I actually have a business background, but it's not in the toy industry. So this has been quite a learning experience for me as far as, taking Gene and Jeff's ideas and see them through to a product at our doorstep. So it was really enjoyable to be along for the ride and get this product to our warehouse and get it out to our customers. It's been really neat.
Great. I'll tell you, well, gentlemen, you're definitely doing things right. These figures are amazing. I was actually talking to Jeff a little bit earlier, and I told him that, if you're really into cryptozoology and you like cryptids, there's really not a lot out there that's, these really impressive big figures with accessories and backgrounds. And, they're as much a collectible as they are an action figure. Do all of you have an interest in cryptids and the paranormal?
How far were you into this, Craig? I know Jeff was geeked on this stuff too, and I obviously was. Mm-hmm. Did you have any kind of interest before this in these things?
Just in talking with Jeff over the years, I can remember back, probably not when the Patty film came out. That was before my time, but I can remember seeing the film shots of Patty and at a young age, and it really
it affected me. And then we're also from an area around here that does have some historical cryptozoology. We're near the Piasaw bird.
Alton, Illinois.
In Alton and Grafton, Illinois. And there was actually some sightings of large birds over in Lake Shelbyville.
Wow.
And, they never proved what they were. They thought maybe they were a California condor, but it was never proven what these birds were. And I was probably maybe 8 or 9 about that time. And that stuck with me all these years. And then Jeff kind of revived my interest in cryptozoology.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was scarred from the beginning. I think I wasn't supposed to see a copy of Argosy magazine from back in '67. I seen that on there, and that was my first scar. Then I saw Legend of Boggy Creek. That scarred me pretty well, and after that, it was all just, okay, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah, that Patterson footage really influenced a lot of people. I guess just growing up with Bigfoot and the Legend of Boggy Creek, there was a local television station that decided that was a good late-night movie, and I can't tell you growing up how many times I just couldn't sleep.
Yep, exactly. It bugs a guy. It's very disturbing. You get in your little comfort zone, and once you're, of that age, you're like, maybe there's more going on in the world than what I've been led to believe. It stays with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I've gotten older and, of course, we have access to the internet and all these great conventions and things, you get to talk to other people. You're kind of like, there's a lot more to this than we realize. A lot of sightings. Now, have any of you ever had any personal experiences with maybe seeing a cryptid or having something paranormal happen?
I had one experience this was, I guess, must have been late 80s or early 90s. My brother and I saw a sphere that was apparently some kind of craft. And later on that week, I read in the newspaper that it was kind of a UFO flap in Westchester County in New York State, where I used to live. Because we were on our way to McDonald's after band practice one night late, and we were driving down this country road we lived on by this reservoir, and we were kind of joking around about how big the moon looked. And it has that as you're driving, it gives you the impression that it's following you along the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was that type of thing. So we were sort of joking about that. So we get over into the next town and pull into the McDonald's, and there's like 40 people standing there outside their cars just staring at this thing a few hundred feet up in the air. And it wasn't the moon. It was just this spherical golden craft or something. It was the strangest friggin' thing, but I've never seen anything else like that. And actually I had kind of relegated that to just kind of an odd memory.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother had brought it up again recently, and he doesn't believe in any of this stuff. He thinks it's all complete nonsense. And he brought it up to me not too long ago. He's like, yeah, remember that time we saw that UFO? And I was like, what, you thought that was a UFO? He's like, yeah, what else could it be? So I figured if a complete, skeptic who thinks this stuff is all idiotic thought that's what it was, I was like, okay, if you're telling me. So that was my one experience with the paranormal /UFO or whatever.
Wow, that's a pretty good experience. It's pretty amazing.
Strange.
So, in getting together and putting together these great creature replica figures, how did you decide who you wanted to make? How did you decide what figures you wanted to put out in this first wave?
The way the thing started was with a discussion about Bigfoot. When Jeff first came to me with the idea, we met through a friend of mine, and my friend was working on a different project, and he told me that Jeff was looking for somebody specifically to work on a Bigfoot project, and I was really into the material. So I said, I don't have to hear any more. Just give him my number. I'll talk to him. I'm already interested. So our initial wave of figures we talked about was going to be a Sasquatch, a Yeti. Obviously, those two are gimmies on any kind of crypto line.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were going to do a Yowie and an Orang Pendek to broaden it. It was all going to be all relic hominid type slash, cryptic ape type stuff. And as we got further along into the nuts and bolts of the financial process, we realized that we had to try to thin down what we were doing a little bit so that we could make better use of our steel tooling, which initially is your largest investment cost. So Jeff had a pre-existing arrangement with Horror Hound magazine to produce an action figure of their mascot. So rather than produce our 4-figure line and that 5th figure for them, Jeff had the idea, well, if we could put the Horror Hound into our regular line, granted the Horror Hound's not really a cryptid. It's a mythical monster that was created by, the guys who write the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff decided, what'd be cool is if we could use some of the parts from that creature and make a werewolf like a Rougarou, then we could then we'd be splitting our line between 2 ape men and 2 lycanthropes. And it would broaden the appeal of the line and also allow us to knock off 1/5 of our tooling. So it was a combination of just broadening the scope of the variety in the line and also the practical restrictions of the financial aspect of the tooling and the manufacturing costs.
Hey, Chad, can I add something here?
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to. Gene, he's kind of modest, which he shouldn't be because he's a genius. His knowledge of the subject matter it blows me away, and he can reference exact accounts, Native American folklore, verbatim, that really went, to how these, what these were going to look like. Is it going to be a monster? Is it going to be a berry picking buddy? And, his knowledge of that in the whole scheme of this coming together, when somebody that has unlimited talent that can tell you exactly, this is what I'm seeing here. We talked about certain accounts and let's weigh, what are people going to like as opposed to what's the actual account. When somebody that knowledgeable and that talented tells you this can be done, that's a huge step towards, let's do that one. I wanted that to be said.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you from my perspective as a longtime fan of cryptozoology and a longtime fan of collectible toys, and of course I grew up with Transformers and Masters of the Universe and all these things. For lack of a better term, the line definitely has soul to it. When you look at the figures, you can tell that they're crafted with a lot of care, a lot of detail. When I went to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, of course, one of the big appeals for me was, hey, there was an exclusive figure, the North American Sasquatch, the silverback, the alpha male. These figures are great, that they can be redecos as an exclusive, and it literally is like a whole new figure, even though the mold is the same. As far as I can tell on both figures, the mold was the same, but the figures it's wonderful. Just the repaint makes you feel like it is a whole new figure because it's sculpted so well and there's so much detail.
Yeah, we wanted to have a certain amount of flexibility with the sculpture, and we're going to exploit that a little more in Series 2 as well. What we did with the Sasquatch, he's the one with the most variety in the first line. We have the A figure, which is kind of the autumn-colored red furred Sasquatch, which is kind of a more traditional coloration, and he has the more placid expression. The Ohio Bigfoot Conference, it's hard to tell because of the dark deco, but he actually has a different head sculpt, which is it's slightly more feral. He has gritted teeth. His eyes are a little different shape. And there's a third one that I actually based off of an author who's become a friend of mine, this guy John Quasar, who wrote a book called Recasting Bigfoot, and his theories lean towards various varieties or types of Sasquatch that are seen across the United States that have varieties of physiological differences as far as being broader or being thinner and having different head shapes, more human, less human. One of his theories was that one was actually more along the lines of an ape-like version of a spider monkey or a howler monkey. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I took a howler monkey head and I reinterpreted it as if it was the head of a great ape. So a little bit of gorilla mixed into it. So our third Sasquatch variation, which you'll see later in the year at another conference probably, is based on the native mythology around the skookum, which is more of a mountain devil, kind of dangerous, more dangerous and cannibalistic Sasquatch. In native mythology, there were certain tribes that they actually traded with the Sasquatch, supposedly. Some of them just sort of steered clear of them and had a reverence for them but feared them. And some of the tribes actually actively went to war with them because they would steal women and children from their tribal areas. So the third Sasquatch is the most malevolent of the three. Like you said, the silverback is kind of more of a clan leader. And the first one is kind of more in line with the Patty-esque sort of, like Jeff had mentioned before, kind of a berry-eating, kind of agrarian, softer creature.
Mm-hmm. So the next one's going to be more like the Mount St. Helens sort of Sasquatch that they referred to that was, I believe a lot of the Native Americans said they were cannibals.
Yeah, exactly. More like the ones that supposedly attacked the guys in the cabin.
Yeah, the Ape Canyon attack.
Right, the Ape Canyon incident would have been more of a skookum type creature.
Okay, well that's amazing. Are you going to, not only with expanding the line, are you looking to do a lot more convention or show exclusives?
Yeah, we've found that by breaking our lines down into smaller groups of offerings, rather than doing massive waves of figures of a single character, if we subdivide those waves into smaller runs and offer them as either web exclusives or show exclusives, it gives us more variety for the collector, because there's kind of a army builder mentality where they'll want more of a variety of one particular creature, so they can have, if someone's particularly into Bigfoot, for instance, that would appeal to them. It also makes it easier just from a numbers standpoint to move 4 varieties of the same figure rather, in smaller numbers than massive numbers of one character. So there's a practicality to it as well as an appeal for the collector for variety.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that completely. There's a lot of lines that have kind of looked towards that. Like I know some of the Masters of the Universe figures were like that. They would reuse some old parts and do some exclusive coloring and stuff, and they came out with some really impressive figures. Like I said, with these, there's certainly that flexibility because the care and the detail and everything is there. Have you thought about doing some sort of like collectors club where, like say you sign up to be part of this club, you get access to figures a little bit earlier, and maybe you have like a club exclusive that you could only get if you were part of like the Creatureplica club or Creatureplica member. Have you thought about anything like that?
I'm taking notes here, Chad, as you speak.
No, right? You should. Yeah, it's we've talked about a lot of different possibilities. We're not quite there yet. And initially, we're just trying to build our foundation to work off of with this first series.
Yes.
And we've learned a lot from it. I mean, I've been doing this for years, but actually producing a line and shepherding the thing through the factory, and with all the ups and downs that go with that, we're still kind of fielding some of those grounders and thinking about how we're going to approach things a little differently with the next series. But that's that's a great idea. It certainly makes sense with the idea of how we're going to approach the next series, where there'll be a lot more variations on the characters in the next line, so that we have more variety to offer as specialty product.
Right.
For all the reasons I said before, not to go over that again, but certainly website exclusives or club exclusives would be a cool thing.
Absolutely. And I'll just throw this out there, not to say that you guys have to think you have to do this, but if you, as you have related figures through the different series lines, if they have some sort of interlocking bases or something to make a diorama where you could kind of display the figures together, that would be pretty nice too.
Yeah, I've kind of toyed around, no pun intended. I've kind of messed around with that with other toy series I've worked on. The only issue with it becomes cost prohibitive to injection mold large bases.
Mm-hmm.
If you look, I do a lot of work for Diamond Select. I don't know how deeply into the toy thing you are, but
I'm very familiar with that. Yep, I actually, a friend and I used to do the BotCon conventions. We sold Transformer toys for years, and so we had a couple of friends that owned a comic book shop. So, the Diamond Select stuff, we're very familiar with it. So yeah, we were in toys for a long time. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there and interject, but yeah, absolutely, I'm very familiar with that.
No, that's okay. I just I didn't want to go off on a tangent if it was something that you weren't familiar with and how much background I might have to get into. But basically, what we've done with a couple of their lines is you do either Build-A-Figures or you do a Build-A-Base. Diamond likes to do Build-A-Base things. I did a series of Munsters figures for them, and one of our Build-A-Base items was I built Grandpa's electric chair, whereas you bought the whole line, you could put together his electric chair. And then the big one we did is I built the whole staircase with Spot underneath, with the hinged stair, so you open it up and the dragon's underneath there and everything. And the incentive to buy the whole line is that if you wanted to build that big base, then you buy all the figures. And
that's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the amount of extra tooling cost is fairly significant when you want to do something like that. So you want to establish yourself so that you can sell through a line of figures. So when you add that extra incentive, it kind of goes hand in hand. Sometimes you add something like that, it could potentially bump the price of your product up. And we already have kind of a high-priced action figure because we're little guys and also because they're big, heavy figures. So as we approach that stuff, we have to approach it with a certain amount of circumspection, But the other potential thing that I've kind of thought about is if we did something like that, that would be the type of item that we could offer through a collector's club thing, where we would take specific orders, and if you hit that magic pre-order number, then you make it. Kind of like the way Mattel does with that Castle Grayskull or whatever they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I have that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So that would be a way to kind of skin that cat, and because I've done I'd love to do giant bases, but even just the kind of the little environmental bases we're putting with the guys now, you have to think about how you're going to deco that thing, how much plastic it is in terms of the space in the mold, and also how big is that going to increase the size of your package. So all of these aspects weigh on how you got to move forward, because everything snowballs through the process. We found you get a quote to do something at the factory, but then there's all these other costs that come along the way in terms of safety testing and then certain types of technical issues you run into. So I guess the short answer is yes, we'd like to do it. The longer answer is the one that I just rambled away there for
That's okay. I understand. It's not like in the late 70s when you could put out a giant Kraken or a Rodan or a Shogun Godzilla with some hollow rotocast, and if the fist punched a kid in the face hard enough to break a tooth, it was okay. It just happened.
Yeah. Well, you bring up the rotocast. I mean, the rotocast is something we've talked about. We haven't actually taken something to the factory to cost it out. I mean, I've done some larger rotocast stuff for Mezco. I do all their Thundercat stuff. I did like an 18-inch Frankenstein and a 2-foot tall Bugs Bunny. Mm-hmm. And they seem to be able to produce them at a pretty cheap price. The Thundercats are about 14 inches tall, and they retail at about $34. So if you look at that, I mean, what I'd like to be able to do is if we get into lake monsters, or like you talked about, the Thunderbird type things, you'd want to do those a little bigger. I mean, we couldn't do them in scale so that you have like a 100-foot Nessie against an 8-foot Sasquatch, but you could do them so that they looked reasonable in comparison. But that would be a place where you do a big rotocast creature. Maybe you could get away with doing a Nessie that was like from head to tail was like 20 inches. It would still look pretty impressive against our regular line, but as a hollow rotocast and you limit the certain amount of articulation, then you could get away with it. And you sell it like they'd sell dinosaurs in Toys R Us, where it's not really in a box. It just sort of has a tag around the neck, that type of thing, to kind of limit your costs. But again, for us, what a larger company could do with something like that, when they're going to produce, under contract with Toys R Us, they're going to produce 50,000 pieces or whatever. We're going to do a fraction of that. So we're going to pay 5 times the price, because we can't hit that magic number that gets us a massive discount. So everything has to be thought through, and then, we got to pinch pennies to figure out how feasible it actually is. And it depends on what we build now. If we build a serious fan base for this type of material, and as you know, as a guy who's into all this stuff, it's really never been done. Mezco tried to do it about 12 years ago or something.
With the Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil and the Mothman. I remember those.
Yeah. And when he first started doing it, I went to his showroom at Toy Fair that year, and they were big figures. They were like the size of our figures. They were like 7-8 inches tall, as I recall. And he had a big Nessie and a fish tank it was an oddball design. It didn't look like a plesiosaur, but when he actually costed the thing out and balanced it against the interest in the figures, that's why he ended up pantographing all of them down to that small, 4-inch scale, and he ditched the Nessie because it was too expensive.
I remember that.
And he couldn't be confident in the sell-through on the product, even though he had Toys R Us with him on that. So really, unless you count Mez's outing, it's really never been done before at all, because I've pitched this for years, and until Jeff rolled up, no one was interested. I do tons of work for all these companies, but they want to do, generally speaking, they want to stick to licensed properties. They're guaranteed to sell Spider-Man and the Avengers and whatever else. But this stuff, the argument is always, well, it doesn't sell, but no one's really done it, so no one knows of it well. And my assertion's always been, if you do it justice, then people will buy it, kind of build it and they will come kind of mentality. But no one wants to roll the dice on something like this. I can't tell you how many times companies come to bat with projects to me. It's always the same thing. It's like, oh, you want to do Universal Monsters or Batman? It's like, yeah, of course, because it sells every single time. But even with stuff like Universal Monsters, any of us could name the main 5-6 characters in that universe off the top of our heads. Once you get outside of those guys, kind of the Justice League of Universal Monsters, the rest of them just don't sell. And that's when the people drop the license, the next guy picks it up. They do the same thing, do the main 6 characters, or even less, just 4 of them, and then they're out. So what we want to do is build this so that this type of thing will be kind of like what McFarlane did 15, 16 years ago, whenever the hell it was they started out, where he was one of the first guys to come out of the box and start doing all sorts of original toys that were based on nothing. They were vaguely related to the comic book, but even when he did the things right out of the comic book, they totally redesigned it for the toys. And once he kind of sold out and went completely into licensed products, no one touched original toy designs after that, for the most part, other than the gigantic ones you can name. Like He-Man was created by Mattel as a toy, and Transformers, I think, was created by Hasbro, if I recall correctly. So that was created as a product before it became like a cartoon or whatever.
Yeah, Hasbro actually, not to nerd out on you guys, but Hasbro actually saw their micro change and Diaclone figures over in Japan, and they struck a deal with Takara to let them be the exclusive seller for their G.I. Joe stuff. And they, in exchange, they would let them take these transformable figures, and they got with Marvel Comics. And Marvel came up with the premise of the two warring factions and the character names and the bios. And that's why all those toys we had that first year or so, a lot of them had little places for figures that, well, they didn't come with figures because over in Japan, they weren't sentient. They were little piloted machines. So they just kind of merged the two lines up and made them. Not that that's important to our conversation this evening. It's just I used to collect and sell them all the time, so I kind of knew about that.
No, it's interesting. I'm always interested in all this geeky stuff. One way or another, it either comes back and ends up being something I can get hired to do, or just something that helps to know about for whatever reason. A friend of mine, actually, that I worked with at McFarlane, he works for Hasbro now on Transformers.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. I mean, there are no restrictions on this type of property because there's no licensing involved. It's not like if we tried to do like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, it'd be a different ball game. But
yeah,
to just, it's basically these designs. Me and Jess sort of batted around a little bit back and forth of what we kind of would like to see. But for the most part, some of these, like the other guys didn't even see them before I was done. I just kind of pull them out of my head. This is stuff I've been thinking about for decades.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's been up there in a lockbox, and just some of the stuff I've just saved. I've worked on properties here and there where I could have slid some of it into it, but taking too much of your own material and throwing it at a client is just kind of a waste. So a lot of this stuff I've just been waiting to use, but for the most part, anything we do with this, unless you come across a very specific version of a creature, which I can't even think of one and I'm fairly well versed in this stuff, I can't even think of one where we run into problems. I know there's a few guys that have tried to copyright certain creatures' names and things like that, but I think we're pretty free and clear as far as how we approach this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think you're in the right direction. I mean, like I said, the figures look great, the details there. It's something that I think now more than ever, people are interested in it. I mean, there's a lot of shows that feature cryptids and Bigfoot. I think more people are probably interested now, especially with things like the dogmen sightings that have increased over the last few years. And I definitely think that there is a market for it. Me personally, the figures are wonderful. I'll definitely try to get all of them if I can. But yeah, you gentlemen are doing something very right. They look great. You can tell that there's a lot of care and a lot of knowledge put into the figures. It's definitely, you can tell these are produced by someone that has a genuine interest. They're not just we're going to make this XYZ monster figure. Let's put it out, hope that people like monsters are going to buy it, and just go. So, yeah, they're definitely wonderful figures.
Yeah, I appreciate that you see what's gone into it, because the thing we've talked about from day one is that we want this line to like you said, be true to the source material. And for some of the creatures, I've actually talked to witnesses to put together a composite, for instance, for the Sasquatch's face on the original one. And I read an awful lot of this stuff too. Mm-hmm. But then the flip side of it also is I want the line to feel I don't want it to feel like a cryptozoology mythology line. I want it to feel like a speculative zoology/biology line. I want it to be the precursor to the discovery to some of these animals. Like, obviously, you're probably not going to find a real werewolf. I find that a little hard to stomach as far as a real creature, but I think that the Sasquatch is probably out there, and I think the Yeti is out there. There's enough legitimate evidence and too many firsthand reports to completely poo-poo all of it, So I want when they find some of these creatures for people to be able to look at what we've done and realize that we weren't that far off, So then from that point, we become a zoology line, not a cryptozoology line, other than, some of the outer ones we start to play around with. And on top of that, I have an immense amount of respect for the Native American lore. And I don't want to denigrate that segment of the population by doing something that is just, a crappy toy that has no relationship to the material. Because if you've seen any of our more recent kind of advertising campaigns, and also on the back of the package, you can see I designed some native masks that are based off of a variety of different things. I didn't want to just cop Native American designs, but I did some things that had that flavor on the package, and I also did sort of a stylized drawing of the hairy man pictograph.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to use some of those things because of my respect for the material. Especially putting the hairy man on the package, I sort of wrung my hands a little bit on it because I didn't want to take something that was potentially had almost a spiritual or religious iconography to a certain demographic of people and just make it look like I was trying to get it a stamp onto a toy package just as a commercial thing. But from the people I've talked to, there's only been a handful of people that even knew what it was. They happen to be people that actually could take me to see the pictograph at some point. They had talked to people who had noticed it, who were, Native Americans, and they didn't think it was being ill-used. So there's a lot behind it in terms of what we're doing, where we want to do it responsibly and with respect to the subject matter.
You can tell that all the attention to detail and the care was put in there because, the packaging is awesome, too. They really pop when you see them in there.
I toyed around with the idea of reclosable clamshell packaging because I have a few decent examples of it. The only thing I worry about is that type of packaging would lend itself to more damage in shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we get them from the factory, even. Like, for instance, I've been reorganizing my studio, and I have the DCUC Lobo that I bought off of eBay.
Yeah.
And I think he was a San Diego exclusive, and he's a pretty big figure. He comes with a little dog and everything and a big gun. And that has kind of like the snaps along the edge of the clamshell, which is really cool, but I can imagine that thing just sort of popping open and having all sorts of problems. So I got to think it through a little more. I've had a few of them that worked pretty well. I just can't imagine it not being a pain in the butt down the road. There's enough little idiosyncrasies to the process we're dealing with without adding that to it. But it's definitely something to consider.
Well, Jeff, Craig, anything that over our conversation we've been having, anything that you'd like to interject?
This is Craig. I'd just like to say that it's really been enjoyable. I think the interactions that we have with our customers. I was on Facebook. I think Gene was actually answering somebody on Facebook as we sat here and talked with you. And I doubt you can find any other toy line out there where you can actually talk with the sculptor, that they would be that easily accessible. And, on the same page, when you call us with a question about shipping or a question about anything, you're going to talk to one of the owners of the company. I'm sure that's not always the case in this industry.
Yeah, that's very impressive, and that's the kind of customer service that you don't get anymore.
Yeah, it's a four-man operation. So basically, everything that's got to be done from the artistic aspects to hobnobbing with the customers and dealing with all of the other problems as far as shipping and all that. There's four guys handling all of it. So,
yeah. Hey, we better give a shout out to Nick Epley, the fourth man. He's kind of the guy that when you got to send a big check to China, you know what I mean. You want to have a guy that you trust, with your whole heart. And so I got to mention him. But in what we're talking about, I think it's pretty, the consensus here that we love what we do. I mean, it's fun, and like being out there with you at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, that is the fun part. And because of Gene, I got to say this, because of Gene, I get to be the hero there. You know what I mean? I get to say, look what I got, and everybody's like, you're the greatest, and I'm secretly going, I'm really not the greatest. He couldn't make it. But no, it's just that is the fun part. That could be a whole other show. We could talk about the conference. We could talk about personal, paranormal experiences and stuff. That's a whole other show. But I know all of us have to get going here.
All right. Well, listen, gentlemen. Is there anything else you would like to throw out there before we end this interview? And I definitely want you to let everybody know where they can order the figures, and if there's anything that's coming up that you want to give us a little hint about, or just anything else you want to throw out there for our paranormal guys fans that are getting to listen to this interview.
You want me to go first? I won't. Future waves, I'll let Gene talk about that. I do want to mention, first of all, I want to have a shout out here to Mark DeWorth and the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, because that was a blast, and being able to do that figure was awesome. Russ Accord and the International Bigfoot Conference out in Washington on Labor Day weekend is where we will have the Skookum Special Edition exclusive. So that's where that will be. And for all of your guys out there that are kind of wanting a sneak peek of stuff, they should check out the Facebook page for Rougarou Fest down in Hume, Louisiana in October, because there'll be something special there too.
Awesome. So any hints about any of the future figures we may be seeing soon?
Yeah, the couple of the definites in Wave 2, I want to continue the nod to the Native American folklore. So the next creature in that line is going to be the Wendigo. And we're also going to do some alien grays. And these guys will come with, similar to the first series, they're going to come with environmental bases that tie into the creature. And I'm not too far into them, but those are the two definites in that line. Actually, we have the line worked out as to what we're specifically doing for Wave 2, but those are the only two that we're kind of letting out of the bag at this point. Okay. But we'll be doing as many as we can get away with, for sure.
Awesome. Now, for anyone that's not able to attend some of the shows, conferences where there's going to be exclusives, I know the Ohio Bigfoot Conference exclusive, you could order it on the website and have it shipped to you. Will you be able to do that with the other show exclusives?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, unless we get into an arrangement where there's a specific, where it's specifically ordered. If a conference pre-orders the whole thing, then that would be one thing. But generally speaking, we want the exclusives to be available to anyone who can't make the show. So what we generally do is we hold back a certain number for the website and then take a certain number to the show, so that it's, as long as you pull the trigger on it before they run out, you'll have a pretty fair opportunity to grab one, just like we did with the black one for the Ohio show.
Yeah, we have more silverbacks, a few more left on the site, and you can go to creaturereplica.com and they're still there for now. long as they last.
All right. Well, excellent. We'll definitely hope that some of our listeners will take advantage of those few that are still around. I mean, I have my two. I had Bob Gimlin sign one, and I had Bobcat Goldthwait sign one of the others. So now, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you gentlemen want to throw out there?
Mainly Creatureplica.com, where people can get the figures, and check out all of our associated, social network pages like Facebook, our Creature Replica page. Have my studio page is under my name, and my personal page. I kind of blast everything through all those pages. So kind of hard to miss us, but in these days of social network where you're hit with everybody's political and religious nonsense and every other thing that they're eating for breakfast, it's hard to miss stuff. But they can find us on there and see what we're up to and see all of our unsolicited opinions on this stuff too.
All right, awesome. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
Well, that about sums it up. I appreciate being able to talk to you, and what you're doing here for us is pretty awesome. So I appreciate it, and it's all fun. This is what we love.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. I'm really glad that we got to do this. We ended up having a better interview than what we just got to do at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference for all the background noise and the time constraints. Craig, is there anything else you'd like to add, sir?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks to all the Creature Replica customers that have purchased our action figures, and thanks to the stores that are carrying them, because that's an integral part of what we're doing is getting them out to the public. And I know not everybody may order things off the internet, so we have to make those connections with the stores, the mom and pop stores throughout the nation and really throughout the world to carry our line. And I appreciate all that have so far.
Thank you. Well, Gene, Jeff, Craig, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this interview.
Well, thanks, Chad. We appreciate the opportunity, and it means a lot to us that you can kind of see where we're going with this.
Well, definitely. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it very much. Good luck with everything. Well, definitely. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it very much. Good luck with everything. And if there's anything that we can help promote, or you want to get some information to us at Paranormal Guys, we'll definitely relay that on to our fans as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.